Hello and welcome back to the European Parliament in Brussels for the second part of Talking Europe. As EU leaders wrangle over how to solve the never-ending euro crisis, my guest today is Guy Verhofstadt, former Belgian Prime Minister and current leader of the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats in the European Parliament. Mr. Verhofstadt, welcome to our programme. Now, EU leaders are meeting on Sunday for a summit which has already been hailed as a historic event. We know that all eyes are on Brussels at the moment as the world is waiting for a very convincing and ambitious plan to try and save the euro. Nevertheless, officials have already warned that another summit will be needed next week. We understand that they're playing down expectations. Does it mean that Sunday's summit is already expected to be a bit of a failure?
I don't know. I really don't know. I hope not, because what we need now is a global, a comprehensive plan to tackle this crisis. And what we have to stop these half measures that we have taken the last 20 months, because obvious that is one of the reasons of this crisis. We have only taken half measures that were not convincing for the markets. Markets have always have the feeling that all these measures are too little and too late. So I hope that on Sunday, if not ultimately on Wednesday, the political leaders of Europe come forward with a global approach.
Now, when you look at it from the exterior, there is a feeling of chaos, let's put it this way. Yeah. Are our leaders in a state of panic at the moment?
Maybe. Nevertheless, it's so the real problem for the moment is not a sense of panic or of a feeling of panic. The problem is that they know that to end this crisis, they have to transfer power and sovereignty to the European level, and that is a problem. Political leaders don't like to do that. They want to keep their power, they want to keep their sovereignty, and nevertheless, the only way to tackle this crisis is to create an economic and fiscal union in parallel with the monetary union. That's the only way forward, and that takes some time. They are reluctant to do that.
And precisely now, one of the main sticking points is, of course, the question of how to increase the firepower of the EFSF, that's the bailout fund of the European Union. Now, France says that it should be turned into a bank with leverage from the European Central Bank. We know that Germany doesn't like the idea. Germany says it should act as, to put it simply, an insurance company, exactly, to insure the bonds of the ailing members of the Eurozone. What is your position on this?
My position is that the most important question is neither the position of France, neither the position of Germany.
What is the position of Mr. Verhofstadt?
Well, I think the most important thing to do is to abolish the unanimity rule in this rescue fund, because if we stick to the unanimity rule, then a Eurosceptic group in Finland or in Slovakia, as happened, can block the whole system. And the second thing to do is to increase the money in the fund. And they are trying now to escape to that question in saying, oh, it is the ECB who have to do that task, but the ECB don't want to do that. And on the other hand, from the German side, there are other ideas. The idea to make an insurance company from that fund. But
you don't believe that can work?
I have my doubts about that, because they are talking about the possibility to cover 20% or 25 or 30% even of the bonds, the losses on the bonds of
the
countries,
toxic bonds.
On the toxic bonds. But yeah, maybe we shall have already a haircut of 50% on the debt of Greece. So how credible it is, how convincing it is then to say that it's only 20 or 30%. So I have my doubts about it. The best way to come out of this crisis is another way. That's to organize the fastest as possible a euro bond market in the Eurozone, so that you can neutralize debts, so that you can also have enough firepower to create a firewall around the single currency, and that's the best way forward.
But Germany still completely
Yeah, but I
opposed.
think that for the moment there are a number of political parties in Germany who are in favor of Eurobonds. For example, the Greens, Social Democratic Party is in favor, and we try to convince also the other political parties to accept it, because at the end I think it's a cheaper solution than to continue what we are doing now. We have already put several thousand of billions of money, of euros, in the financial crisis, to tackle the financial crisis. We have already paid several hundred of billions of euros to save a number of countries like Greece, Ireland, Portugal. And I think the best way to go forward with this crisis is a Eurobond
You say
market.
it's important to boost the EFSF, so the bailout fund. We know that markets like figures. What kind of magic figure could reassure the market? Some say it should be
2 trillion, they are saying.
2 trillion?
But markets are saying 2 trillion. I have proposed at least to triple the possibilities of the...
currently stands at 440 billion.
Yeah, 440, but that's not the real amount, naturally, because some parts of this amount has been used for a number of countries, for Greece, for Ireland, for Portugal. So it's less than the 440 billion. But it's clear that you have to increase the money of the fund. Some people are talking about 2 trillion for that, because we shall ask that this fund is also intervening in recapitalizing the banks in Europe. So if you ask them to buy bonds of countries in difficulties, if you ask them to help with loans to countries in difficulties, and if you ask the EFSF also to recapitalize the banks, you need certainly more than the 440 billion.
You need a lot of money, that we understand.
Exactly.
But can Europe afford the bill?
I think so. If you create a Eurobond market in which you can attract savings from outside Europe. And outside Europe, there is an enormous will to invest in Europe, but in a stable, in a system that is based on stability and is based on discipline, and not in a system that is depending from the opinion from one Eurosceptic political party in one of the member states of the Eurozone.
Now, as a federalist, aren't you tired, aren't you frustrated of what some have called a Franco-German diktat? Merkel and Sarkozy meeting together and putting all their partners in front of a fait accompli. That's, of course, to the detriment of the European institutions.
Yeah, but that doesn't work for the moment. And we see here the limits of this cooperation between Germany and France.
But why do you say it's not working?
Well, it's not working because, let me give one example, on the whole problem of strengthening the Stability Pact, they got a deal. That's the so-called Deauville deal of last year. Well, it didn't work. European Parliament has changed completely the content of that agreement, and we have strengthened this Stability Pact in a way that was not foreseen by France and Germany. Because in the initial opinion of France and Germany, it was still the member states who were deciding on the question if a country is breaching the pact, yes or no. What doesn't work, because what you need is an independent authority, the European Commission and the European Central Bank, who is doing that job. So we changed that. And my fear is that France and Germany also in this period shall come forward with a number of ideas which shall not work. For example, to organize an economic government based on the intergovernmental method. That
you want the
doesn't work.
Commission to be in charge?
I want the Commission. The Commission is, for example, today responsible for the rules on competition, and that works. Why not giving more power and competence to the European Commission also on economic governance and on the issues of the Stability and Growth Pact?
Is your sense of frustration shared by smaller countries like your country of origin,
Well, you
Belgium?
see today that countries like the Netherlands, like Finland, like Belgium, like Sweden are also in favor of a system where we can increase the power of the European Commission and the European Central Bank. And that is a better way to go forward and to tackle the crisis than to create an intergovernmental system. So I can tell you my experience. I was 9 years member of the European Council.
As a Prime Minister of Belgium.
As Prime Minister of Belgium. I have never seen a colleague of mine standing up, putting the finger to another colleague and saying, you are breaching the Stability Pact. You are not doing the economic reforms that are needed. And I think that...
So no peer pressure?
No peer pressure, that exists a little bit, but it is not convincing for the markets. The markets don't believe that. What the markets want to see is that we create inside the European Union a real economic and fiscal union in parallel with the monetary union. And that is what we don't have today. We have still 17 governments, 17 different economic strategies, 17 bond markets, and that doesn't work. That
so you want
simply doesn't
the
work.
Commission to be in charge. Now, this week, the Greek Parliament approved a painful set of austerity measures amidst very violent protests in Greece, clashes, dozens of people were injured. We're seeing social unrest across Europe. Aren't you worried that this social unrest is going to spread even further and could potentially get out of control?
No, that's certainly a danger, what we are facing today. And the only response to that is to come forward with European leaders with a plan to create also growth and investment, and increase investment in the European Union. And again, to do that, you need a Eurobond market, because we don't have the money for the moment to boost investment in Europe, and certainly not in Greece. To do that, we need a Eurobond market so that we can attract savings from outside the European Union to invest in the European economy. China, Brazil, but also other countries, other BRIC countries. And that's absolutely necessary. Today, there is a huge amount of savings that are going to the other side of the Atlantic, to the US. The Chinese are the main, in fact, investors in, for the moment in T-bonds, so the treasury certificates of the United States. Why we could not do the same thing in Europe and attract savings from outside Europe to invest in our economy?
A lot of demonstrators across Europe say that this is the crisis of liberalism. Liberalism is, of course, the very nature of your party. What do you respond?
It's absolutely not the crisis of liberalism, because liberalism doesn't mean a system of free market without rules. I think this is the crisis of a system of capitalism who thought that it was not necessary to have rules in the market. But we know already since the 18th century that it is necessary to have rules. It was Adam Smith, so in The Wealth of Nations, who said that a free market without rules is like a jungle.
Now let's go back to your country of origin, Belgium. After almost 500 days of political crisis and stalemate, there seems to be light at the end of the tunnel. Elio Di Rupo, the president of the French-speaking Socialist Party, is poised to become the next Prime Minister of Belgium. We're going to talk about this in a moment, but first, let's have a look at our report.
Supporters of a Flemish separatist group showed surprise and excitement in June of 2010 as election results shifted power in their favor. The new Flemish Alliance Party gained control of the most seats in Parliament as a result of the vote. Leaders from Wallonia in the south of the country immediately expressed concern.
The success of the new Flemish alliance in the north of the country is problematic for Belgium's future. As we know, the party has separatist tendencies.
Since the 2010 election, the country has been in deadlock over what its future should look like, leaving Belgium without an effective central government. At the heart of the debate lie regional and linguistic differences between Dutch-speaking Flanders and French-speaking Wallonia. Many Flemish have been pushing for more autonomy and even independence, saying they no longer want to subsidize the poorer southern region of Wallonia. Coalition negotiations began to move forward following the July ouster of the separatist party, the New Flemish Alliance, from talks, excluded for being too inflexible. Parliament finally reached the two-thirds majority needed for state reforms this month and announced a deal resolving disputes over electoral boundaries and granting regions more autonomy.
Nous avons un accord institutionnel global.
We have a global institutional agreement, an agreement that will help our country evolve and gain stability.
The agreement could pave the way towards the formation of a new government. Of top concern for new leadership, drafting a budget for 2012 and dealing with the European debt crisis.
Guy Verhofstadt, does your country have a sustainable solution, or are we just buying time until the next election?
No. I think it's a sustainable solution because it's a global agreement that has been reached between the main political families of the country to modernize the federal structure of the country and to increase the autonomy of the regions. So I think it's a sustainable solution for the next decades.
Every reform involves more and more devolution. Hasn't the federal state become an empty shell in Belgium?
No, because taxation, social security, foreign policy is still the core business of the federal state. So I think that this new agreement is more or less a good balance between more autonomy for the regions, at the same time important tasks for the federal state. But I think it's interesting to see that it's possible with long negotiations to come to an agreement in
Very long
Belgium.
negotiations.
Yeah, okay, but that's normal in a federal state. In a federal state, it's always necessary after a few decades to modernize the system. And in the meanwhile, the economic results of Belgium are not so bad. High economic growth. Cuts in the.
So you're better off
fiscal.
without a government?
No, I'm not an anarchist asking for that. But I'm sure that we are on the right track now.
Now, one last question. You said that this is a wide agreement. However, though, the N-VA, which is the Flemish separatist party which won the election in Flanders and created this crisis, will be in the opposition. So
Yep.
we'll be able to criticize, we'll be able to grow even further.
Yeah, but I don't think it was possible to reach an agreement with the Flemish separatists around the table. That was clearly impossible to do so. So the most important now is that
So their role in Belgian politics is to act as an agent provocateur.
Apparently, yes. That's the role they have chosen the last weeks and the last months.
Guy Verhofstadt, former Belgian Prime Minister and current leader of the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats in the European Parliament, thank you very much. Now, thank you for watching this edition of Talking Europe. From all of us here in Brussels, goodbye.